Welcome to everyone joining us for the ASU Masterclass. My name is Lois Malone, and I will be the moderator of this lecture. I am speaking in English, and the lecture will be in English, but we have Spanish translation available as well. If you want to hear this lecture in Spanish, please click on the globe at the bottom of your screen. Before I introduce our guest lecturer, let me explain what the ASU Masterclass is. The ASU Masterclass is an online lecture series that highlights the latest research-based innovations impacting our world today. It features researchers, professors, and subject matter experts from around Arizona State University. This masterclass will last an hour. Dr. Siebold will present for about 45 minutes, and at the end, he will take some questions from the audience. Please write your questions in the question and answer box, and I will watch for your questions to ask Dr. Siebold. I will ask as many questions as we have time. We are recording this lecture and will make the recording available to your professors afterwards. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Brent Siebold lecturing on a topic of how to think like an entrepreneur. Dr. Siebold is an expert faculty designer and administrator of university-based entrepreneurship and innovation programs. Last year, he was recognized as one of the top instructors in the Fulton Schools of Engineering at Arizona State University. He is both the program designer and program director for Arizona State University's Master of Science in Innovation and Venture Development. And he has a website that I will send to all of you as well in the chat function. Dr. Siebold, your list of accomplishments could take the entire hour, but I want to turn the rest of the time over to you, and we all want to hear from you. So thank you for joining us.
Lois, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute honor to be with all of you this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you might be around the world. It is a thrill to join you and talk about my favorite topic, entrepreneurship, and more importantly, the entrepreneurial mindset, how you can think like an entrepreneur to change the world, and more specifically, leverage the power of technology to make people's lives better. So I've prepared some slides to run through to help share with you what I've developed over the past decade. I've combined several entrepreneurial thinking methodologies into a repeatable process that I call the 7 C's of innovation management. So we'll go ahead and jump right into those and hopefully have some fun and certainly take some questions and dive in along the way. So as mentioned, I strongly believe we have an opportunity to develop an entrepreneurial mindset, all of us here in the room today, to create a competitive advantage regardless of what your major might be. So if you're studying social behavioral sciences or humanities or business or engineering, mathematics, science, technology, whatever it is that you're into, I believe that we can apply an entrepreneurial mindset to match your technical or disciplinary skill set. So we're going to talk through how we can accomplish that together. In order to contextualize my research and the work that I've done at Arizona State, I think it's important to recognize this list of design aspirations that have been laid forth by our leader here at Arizona State University, Dr. Michael Crow, our president, who describes himself as an entrepreneur who just happens to work for a large research institution in the Southwestern United States and now globally. So you see this list of design aspirations behind me here in my office, and I've shown you here on the slide that the first 3, there are now 9 design aspirations of our university. But I think it's important to point out, number 3, when this was published back over 20 years ago, circa 2002, it was pretty controversial for a university president to encourage the entire population of the institution to value entrepreneurship. In fact, many folks in the audience that time myself included, a few years following the publishing of this document, raised the question, should folks that are studying the humanities value entrepreneurship? Should people studying poetry and creating art and focused on healthcare be worried about entrepreneurship? And conversely, my colleagues in the business school asked the same question. Why is entrepreneurship being supported and valued across the whole institution when everybody clearly knows that entrepreneurship should live in the business school? And so there was a very vigorous conversation around this idea that everyone within the academy, everyone, quite frankly, in our local and global society should value entrepreneurship. And I think fast forward 20 years later, what I'd like to show you is that this challenge, this design aspiration was 100% spot on. And it certainly enabled a lot of our students, our faculty, our alumni, our stakeholders, and certainly all of you to create value in a sustained and impactful way. So let's take a closer look at how this happens. And, before I do that, as Lois mentioned, I am thrilled to be the leader of entrepreneurship and innovation within our Fulton Schools of Engineering. And I have this role because the School of Engineering was one of those disciplines almost 20 years ago saying, how are we going to value entrepreneurship within engineering? We're good at building things. We'll leave the entrepreneurial undertakings to the MBA students or the folks in the business school. And so there was a little bit of trepidation, I think, from my faculty colleagues in the world of technology. But certainly since that time, and for all of you that are studying STEM in STEM fields, you now have the agency to feel confident about classifying yourself not only as an entrepreneurial thinker, but at some stage in your career, very likely as an entrepreneur or as an intrapreneur. So one of the things I had to do in helping our students and faculty feel confident, and not only our engineering students and faculty, but certainly students and other folks across the university over the past decade, is to demystify this old French word meaning risk-taking and creation of new endeavors, literally rowing out into the open ocean with an unknown outcome. Entrepreneurship, I know through my research, is a scary word to the majority of our students and the majority of civilization. We have the data to back this up. So in the engineering school, I found great success breaking entrepreneurship down to its most common denominator, which is solving for X. What our technologists are very good at is problem solving. And I suspect most of you, regardless of your discipline, regardless of your major, are very good problem solvers as well. That's what makes college learners so exciting to work with, is that you see an opportunity to make the world a better place through your discipline, your hard work, and your research. And that, at its core, is about problem solving. And you have to eat a lot of pizza along the way to get the solution correct. So let's break down entrepreneurial mindset just a little bit further. Entrepreneurial, this is designing, this is creating, this isn't just the technical aspect of solving for X. It really does encompass everybody who cares about their craft in life, whether that's art, music, health, the list goes on and on. The other thing that we need to take a moment to break down is this idea of mindset, that if you don't have the correct mindset to be an entrepreneurial thinker or to be an innovator, the outcome we're looking for as a society probably won't manifest in the way we'd like. So if you are interested in making the world a better place and perhaps becoming successful in that endeavor yourself, step one is to be open to the idea that you can affect change. You can create a solution that can help not only yourself, but potentially millions, if not billions of people along the way. So if you have the right attitude, you have the capacity to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. So in order to kind of take this journey as a learner at any stage of your academic or professional career, I've incorporated two sets of activities. One, this idea of entrepreneurial mindset, with another that I care deeply about, which is venture creation. So I believe that in order to learn how to harness your own innate entrepreneurial mindset, it helps a lot if we can think about entrepreneurial mindset in its most common form, which is developing a new product or service. And in that experience, we can tap into some of the common steps that are related to what I call venture development. And this is separate from what many of you might have done in high school or college or postgraduate work of project-based learning, which is very common in the technical STEM fields, and also different from case-based or theoretical learning. So venture-based learning is unique in that we're looking for a mechanism to amplify our impact after we've potentially successfully solved for X within the process. So entrepreneurial mindset combined with venture-based learning, all rolled up into 7 repeatable steps that I call the 7 C's of innovation management. So let's just start. This is our motto. We have to have a bias towards action. If we want to make the world a better place as innovators, as entrepreneurial thinking folks, the very first thing we need to do is be willing to get started in the process. So here is our call to action at Arizona State University. We encourage you all to just start. So let's dive in. The first ingredient of being an entrepreneurial thinker, especially in the world of technology, is to have a willingness, and this again aligns with the importance of having the correct mindset going in, is to care about what it is that you want to solve. What is the domain of your life that you would like to make better as an entrepreneurial thinker, as an entrepreneurial doer? So I'm quoting our university president, who again is an entrepreneur. He said very wisely that if you don't care, you can't innovate. And what makes ASU a fantastic place to be affiliated with is the fact that we have so many human beings who care so deeply about making the world a better place. It makes it easy for us, not only as faculty and administrators, but certainly the students, to dive in and make change. So in addition to our president, I also learned this lesson directly from this gentleman. So I'm curious if anybody in the audience happens to recognize this famous inventor. So if you recognize who this person is, you might go ahead and pop that into the chat function. We'll see if we get the correct answer. But very likely, many of you have one of his inventions in your pocket right now. So he is one of 2 co-inventors of a company and a set of devices that have changed the world. And we were lucky enough to have him visit us at Arizona State University. So I think, Lois, we probably have the correct answer in the chat somewhere. She's saying yes. So yes, this is Steve Wozniak, who is the co-founder of a small company that we know globally as Apple Computer Corporation. So this is a picture of Steve Wozniak on my left, perhaps you're right. They were successful, according to Steve Wozniak, due to one main ingredient, the fact that they both deeply, deeply cared about the future of the renaissance of what a personal computer could be. So this was not only their job setting out early on, but this was their passion. This is what they did outside of school. This is what they did outside of their work hours. Nobody was forcing them to solve for X in this domain. They did this out of their own accord. So when you're thinking about being an innovator, I want you to think very critically about your impetus for solving for X. Are you being assigned a problem statement, or are you gravitating toward a problem statement because it's an issue that you care about, or your family is affected by it, or your close friends or your siblings are affected by a friction point or something that needs to be improved with your creativity and your interest in solving for X. And in fact, we know now that all that hard work paid off. As many of us know who have read the Apple story or watched the documentaries, this was not an easy undertaking. So this underlies the importance of the first C in the process. If you do not deeply care about the domain in which you're innovating, you will never get to this very first V1 prototype because of how much work goes in to solving for X. The most successful entrepreneurs and innovators and intrapreneurs know that success doesn't happen overnight. It happens over years and in some cases decades. So to get this correct, you have to be committed to caring about the domain in which you're trying to improve. And so we were very fortunate, as I mentioned, to have Steve Wozniak rile up our crowd of ASU students here at the Tempe campus in Phoenix, Arizona. In Arizona. And it was a thrilling moment for me as a fan of an entrepreneurial process to hear directly from one of the world's greatest inventors that caring about your area of interest is absolutely the first place to start. So as we move on the process and think about how we might apply this within our own lives, I'll share another story how this second step manifested with one of my first students when I got into the classroom sharing these methods with students here at Arizona State. And it's the first C of the entrepreneurial mindset, which is to be innately curious, and specifically being curious about a domain that is a key part of your life, just like it was for Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs in the domain of personal computing. And as a secondary point, I think it's important, if you're going to care about something, pick a domain in which you're spending a lot of time already, with it, whether it's with your friends playing games, whether it's with your family volunteering. The list goes on and on. Where is your initial center of gravity, and how can you dig in to curiosity? So this student here, Jake, one of the two students pictured, took part in an activity that I do in most of my classes, which is to challenge the students to be curious in a tactical way. And so to create a list of things in their domain of interest. In Jake's case, it was just technology was his domain, that he was always thinking of ways to improve his digital and his kind of hardware lifestyle, college student. And so he created a list of things that he saw in his world that were challenging for him, or annoying to him, or cause friction in his everyday life. So I would challenge all of you, if you don't already do this, to keep a journal, and more specifically, a journal related to your areas of your life, your hobbies, your career aspirations, the things that you want to be doing, not just now while you're as a student, but what are the activities you picture yourself doing 5 years from now? So he created this list, and one of the things that he did as he was creating this list was to share some of these friction points that he noticed with his classmates. And one of those classmates happened to be a gentleman by the name of Eric Goodchild. And turned out Eric was a very talented engineer and inventor. And they recognized together that one of their shared friction points in life was charging their devices. All of the constraints related to device charging. You know what I'm referring to. I don't have to go into detail. So putting their heads together to solve for X in a domain that they both cared about, they were able to come up with a novel, now patented technology that allows devices to be wirelessly charged. And this may sound like, oh my gosh, wait a minute, you're telling me these two guys came up with this technology? Of course, they leveraged existing IP, but their technology is 100% novel, it's patented, and it beat out some of the world's brightest minds in Silicon Valley who are already working on this problem statement. Why did they get it right when so many other engineers didn't get it right or didn't get it right in the time frame that they did? The answer, I believe, is because they cared about it, and they also were able to draw on their innate talents as problem solvers. And what they did was they took this technology to market, and very proud to say I don't know if you've ever seen this TV show. This is called, in America, we call this Shark Tank. In Europe, you might have seen this show called Dragon's Den. But essentially, they presented their solution, their wireless charging solution, Era, to the sharks, and they were one of very few co-founding teams that have made it onto this television program that got a funding deal, not from just one of the investors, but three of the investors back this solution. So very proud of both Jake and Eric for being curious and solving for X in a way that was novel and very useful to not only themselves who had the problem, but certainly for the wider swath of humanity who were trying to help along the way. So switching back over to our venture development methodology, I'm drawing from many experts in the field of entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial thinking. When I say intrapreneurial, I'm referring to people like myself that are entrepreneurs who happen to work inside an organization, a small organization or a large organization. So I want to make it clear before we go further that my intent for this lecture is not to turn everyone in the audience into a practicing entrepreneur, a dynamic young college dropout startup founder, but instead you can take these steps and these methodologies and apply these to your life as a professional within your industry, within your career. So let's make that 100% clear. I do not want you to drop out of school to do a startup like you saw Jake do, or I'm going to show you some other examples, but instead think about how you might apply these steps to your everyday life as a human and forward thinking into your career as an innovator. And so about 2 decades ago, we were presented with, as innovators, myself included, a methodology that is now commonly referred to as lean startup methodology. And the key ingredient of lean startup methodology is to practice what we call customer development. So prior to this methodology being introduced to people that wanted to change the world, folks set out to answer the question, can we build it? And what lean startup methodology forced inventors to first answer is the question, should we build it? And more importantly, for whom? And so this is the idea of customer development as a key step in solving the problem correctly. So this is a gentleman who just stepped down as the CEO of a company that we use quite a lot here in the United States. I know in parts of Asia, this company is not used as much as we use it. Why do we use it so much in the United States and other parts of the world? It's because Amazon took this idea of customer development and leveraged it at full scale. And so if you read this quote from Jeff Bezos, the idea here is they're not so much focused on the invention, and there's been many from this company. The idea is to work backwards from what the customer really does want and need in order to design for X appropriately. So when Jeff Bezos and his team asked all of us who are now customers of Amazon, hey, describe your workflow when it comes to shopping, whether it's in person or online. What are your wants? What are your desires? And then based on what you want, as the human we're trying to help, we're going to work backward from that process. And what did we say? We said, when we click buy, we want the product we just bought to show up on our doorstep 5 minutes later. And most companies and most innovators say, well, that's impossible. We're gonna do what we think the customer wants, not what the customer actually wants. So Amazon is making tremendous waves by listening intently to the customer. And when we say we want our package to be delivered almost instantaneously, this is one of the inventions that is kind of attached to this working backwards methodology. I actually shot this video. I was at the Amazon Remars conference a few years ago. And yes, these things are creepy, but it's very likely that they might be delivering packages along with some drones and some other technologies to make our lives better. At least that's the idea, right? Hopefully they don't kill us along the way, but this expands into other domains. I love this example because this is one of my students who was trying to make life better within her family business, which happened to be a funeral parlor. And it's what we're encouraging you to do through this customer development step is to really switch your mindset to assume that you don't know all the answers. You have to put yourself in a researcher mindset to learn about what are the friction points that I might be able to help with, either my family, my colleagues, my friends. What are the key friction points that we might be able to solve as innovators? So this is where the fun starts. When you think of entrepreneurship, you often think of, oh my gosh, I just had the most amazing idea that I came up with in the shower or on my way to class or wherever you might be. But when people think of the idea, and focus on the power of an idea, they likely skipped over the first two steps, the first two C's of this process. I always challenge people that have an idea to first tell me about why do they care about the domain in which this idea exists? And more importantly, how did they validate that the human beings who might benefit from the solution want or need what the idea was that you came up with on a whim in most cases. So let me show you another example of one of my former students who identified a problem that he cared deeply about and then creatively solved it. And to be creative, this is Scott, by the way. Scott identified a friction point right when he got to Arizona State, and it had to do with the connectivity of him and his classmates and logistics around campus transportation and whatnot. So to be creative in problem solving, one of the key steps for anybody, whether it's in the world of software or hardware, is to take your idea that just flashed into your brain and put it immediately down on paper. And for those of you that are computer scientists and software fans, you'll quickly recognize this as what we call a prototype, user interface, user experience a sketch. So what I would challenge all of you to do, and this is exactly what Scott did, is to take a solution and put it down on paper and then test that against what the market might use or want. And oftentimes our ego gets in the way of this process. We might be unwilling to share our idea in a low fidelity form. And look at this. This is literally a mock-up, a wireframe mock-up on a hand-drawn on a piece of paper and then taped to a phone, taped to a device. And what do we see here in this photo? We see the magic of being creative related to what I call problem solution fit. So is this solution fitting with the people in the world that we're trying to help? And the answer here, practicing customer development, is yes. This woman, when presented with a creative solution to a problem that she herself had, was willing to give Scott and his teammates her email address. And she said, when this solution is programmed, I'm going to be the first one to download it. And more importantly, beyond that, I'm going to be excited to use this software to make my life better. So in a nutshell, moving forward, Scott and his co-founder, Jonathan, zeroed in on a problem statement related to helping students logistically get around campus. And they, through a series of experiments, a series of prototypes, created ultimately a company called Air Garage. And this is essentially Airbnb for parking. And they rolled this out here in Arizona, in Tempe. And it was a really exciting time for those students to creatively problem solve and leverage the power of software to solve for X. Ultimately, just this past year, Scott and his two co-founders raised $12.5 million from Andreessen Horowitz, a top VC firm in Silicon Valley, to scale this technology to help even more people around the world. So it's really exciting. Next, I want to make a key point that as an entrepreneurial thinker, you do not need to come up with this brilliant idea all on your own, right? So if you're committed to the domain that you care about, and you're curious about how you might make that domain better and not be egotistically tied to a predetermined solution, then you have the liberating opportunity to go out and see who else cares about these people that I care about and is trying to solve for X. And one of the easiest ways that you have to do this is by leveraging a tool called Google. Now we have a tool called ChatGPT that kind of contextualizes this data even further. But bottom line is, you don't need to start from zero. Just like the Air Garage example, they used Airbnb as a key influence to their innovation, to their creativity. So this is what we talk about when we say you need to be connected to all of the invention and research that's already happening all around you. Don't shut yourself in to thinking I'm a sole genius, or my team and I, we are the smartest ones in the room. We can get this right without any additional input. In most cases, you don't need to, and you don't want to take that approach. This is a team of students who very much leveraged the what we call prior art of technology. In this case, it was water purification. So they were solving for X in the domain of clean drinking water around the world. And they did not come up with every single component of this device on their own. They leveraged existing IP found through, by the way, Google patents, and were able to make a slight improvement on existing technology. And so this is the power of getting outside of your own head and recognizing that in order to innovate, you have to draw from the knowledge and the expertise from other people who care as deeply as you do about solving the problem. Finally, well, not finally, but this is my favorite of the 7 C's. This is the third C of an entrepreneurial mindset. So if you're keeping track, that's curiosity, connections, and ultimately creating value. And this is where the venture development methodology and the entrepreneurial mindset methodology intersect. And the unique item that I want you to pay attention to is this idea that in order to create change, you don't need to be ashamed about leveraging this mystical thing called a business model. And so the way to find out, did you get it right? Did you innovate in a way that helps people and makes their lives better, is through the exchange of value. If you solved for X appropriately, you should be expecting something in return, because as we just learned through these examples, it's not an easy process, right? So let's take a look at breaking down what it means to create value. So here at ASU, you might have heard the news, we're #1 in innovation. So oftentimes we're asked, what does that actually mean? I've created a definition here for my students that incorporate this most important ingredient, which is value creation. You want to create something that's new and better than the status quo, that human beings, this is a key piece of the equation, they value. They like it and they love it and they're willing to use it, and they are like, wow, I don't know how my life existed before you came up with this version of the solution. So I won't go into too much detail here other than to say the root word of innovation is novus. So we are expecting you to think and be creative to come up with something novel. So in order for your solution to be innovative, you've got to have some novelty to it. And that image there that you see, the graphic, is an icon for a patent. So you don't need to necessarily be awarded a patent, but there does need to be what we call a unique value proposition that you develop as part of your solution. Maybe it looks better, maybe it operates better, maybe it's more seamless, but it's got to have something new that the competition doesn't have. And to that point, we also want to be better. We don't want to strive for mediocrity, especially here at ASU, if you're connected with us as a learner. And then finally, the holy grail of this innovation definition is to not only check the boxes on novelty and it's got a better set of features or one single feature that's better than the competition, but most importantly, do human beings who you're trying to help love your solution? And that's the key ingredient to value creation. Oh, there's our billboard. We love seeing these billboards all around the world. So how did we get there? We created a new American university that's better than many other universities out there. And literally hundreds of thousands of people love their affiliation with ASU. So at ASU, we check all three of those boxes. So in order to solve for X, I just want to make it clear, now that we're talking about value creation, that when you're learning this entrepreneurial mindset methodology, it really helps to think about how can we solve for X and manifest that solution in either a product or a service. And most things in life fall into one of these two categories. And here's where value creation is really measured. Will a human you're trying to help either use, pay for, or recommend your solution? And that's where we're going to find value for the user and for you, the creator. So in order to make sure that we got this correct, and most importantly, how can we change the world for the better? That's your job as the next generation of problem solvers in the world. We cannot be afraid of one of the key ingredients of innovation, which is cash. It's the grease that makes your innovation grow and have sustained impact. So I understand for many of the folks in the audience, whether you're an engineer or an artist or a humanitarian or a future healthcare provider, cash can be a difficult topic to center your attention on. But if you really want to help human beings all over the world, you have to be comfortable with the exchange of value in the form of cash, dinero, yen, whatever you want to call it. It's important. And I'm going to point out that many of you are thinking about developing a solution that they don't expect the person they're trying to help to pay for. So I want to make it clear, I'm talking to everybody in the room. This is not just for people that want to develop software or hardware or any sort of product that they would sell on the open market like on Amazon, but this is for those of you in the room that are creating inventions that will help society at every tier of humanity. And so let's look at the requirements for you to create impact with a business model. So using this student invention, this, by the way, is called SafeSip, this device and this venture. And so I want to point out that in order for this invention to have the impact globally that these inventors wanted, they had to identify who is the human being that's going to use the product. And you can see based on the photo, their solution is better than the status quo, right? Instead of hauling the water over the shoulder, they now have a way to transport the water more efficiently. But more importantly, the question is, if that human can't pay for the device, who is going to pay for it? Everybody needs to think about and answer that question, regardless of what you're developing. So if you don't expect the person you're trying to help to pay for your solution, we need to brainstorm and find out who will. And for many of you, if it's not for the artist formerly known as Bill and Melinda Gates, unfortunately, they just got divorced recently, so it's two different Gateses, but they will financially support innovations like this. But for some of you in the room, it might be a sponsor, like an advertiser, right? Many of you use apps that are free, but without an advertiser, it wouldn't be free. For those of you that are focused on for-profit ways of creating value in the world, it's a little bit more straightforward. So going back to my student who worked in the funeral home business, you've got the person that they're trying to help within their family business who is not only going to use the new solution, but they're also the one who pays for it and tells all of their friends about how novel this solution is. So with that, I want to reinforce the fact that this is not just for our future startup founders, which, by the way, if you're thinking about founding a startup, the longitudinal data show you're going to be most successful when you're in your mid 40s, not when you're in your mid 20s. So I'm glad I have an opportunity to share this with you now, regardless of your age, knowing that you can create impact. You can practice these 7 C's at any phase of your professional or academic life. But for all of you, these are tools and strategies and methods that you can use in any capacity, whether it's your personal life, your academic life, or your professional life. And all of us here at ASU want you to change the world for the better. So let's do it. Go Devils.
Thank you, Dr. Siebold. That was a very inspiring and uplifting lecture. As you've been talking, the participants have been putting in some questions, so I'll turn to those now. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. And they are good. We have some really smart, engaged, wannabe entrepreneurs on this webinar. So the first question is, a lot of the examples you gave, like Amazon with Jeff Bezos and Apple with Steve Wozniak, are really big, really influential companies that started off as entrepreneurial ventures. And as you know, and you referred to this, it's kind of hard for entrepreneurs from less developed countries to compete with already established entrepreneurs from more developed countries, like Jeff Bezos. And this can feel discouraging. Can you give some advice to young people that might want to be entrepreneurs but, may feel discouraged about starting a new venture because maybe the systems that, would support them in another country aren't available immediately to them?
Wow, you're right. That is a fantastic question. And it's great to hear where some of the audience is thinking. My first reaction is, I'm so glad you're thinking about swinging for the fences, going big to create change on a global scale. So having the vision to potentially go toe-to-toe with an organization like Apple or Amazon, I think that's every innovator's dream. But I would temper that by saying, actually, there's a well-researched and well-identified phenomena known as creative destruction in the world of innovation. So just like you mentioned, Apple and Amazon started out as what we call disruptors within their respective market. So they were literally, and we don't have to rehash the stories, but they were one person and two person operations for almost a decade before they really saw their unique value proposition turn the tides of what the market really wanted and needed and was willing to pay for. So I understand that infrastructure is varying in various countries around the world, but every innovator that I've spoken with, whether it be in Vietnam or whether it be in Africa or in California or other places, are all in agreement that there is no better time. And we've been saying this for the past decade. there is no a better time that the playing field has been leveled for these creative disruptors to come in and not so much worry about the big corporate competition, but instead be laser focused on how can we help the people who we know. And this is the power of customer development. So instead of being worried so much about the Goliath competitor, if you're laser focused on the human being who you care about, there's a very good chance you're going to out innovate the more established player in the market. So I can tell you for a fact, the leaders of Apple and Amazon and fill in the blank of any big corporation in any country are deathly afraid of a lot of the people in the audience, probably the person that asked that question. They are very worried that they won't be intimidated because they know the power is in their hands to be focused on a way to make things better that right now is being ignored by the big five, if you will. So hopefully let me summarize by saying, go for it, right? I think no matter where you live, if you have a deep caring for the people you want to try to help, you'll figure it out. And then you'll grow organically through the creation of value.
And I think one of the things too that you brought out in all those examples you gave, sure, we focus on people like Steve Wozniak or Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos, but they had other people helping them. It's not just a lonely venture necessarily. You got to get your people around you.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, as you saw from my student examples, it's 100% a team sport. And the most successful of any innovator are in a domain that all 2 or 3 or 4 of the co-founders deeply care about.
Yeah. Turn to another question. This is asking your opinion about this Steve Jobs quote. So Steve Jobs says, "Some people say, give the customers what they want, but that's not my approach. Our job is to figure out what they're going to do, what they're going to want before they actually want it. And that's why I never rely on market research. Our task is to read things that are not yet on the page."
That's great. Yeah, no, I'm obviously familiar with that quote. So thank you for bringing that up. It's obviously one of the touchstones for all innovators who dream of a future that the normal kind of everyday consumer doesn't necessarily see the same way we as innovators might see. So I think a way to take that and internalize it as a normal human being, because let's admit, Steve Jobs was a bit of an outlier, right? Some of these really amazing creative minds are not necessarily wired the same as us in the room per se. And hopefully I've got a miniature Steve Jobs or fill in the blank of any amazing Oprah. I mean, the list goes on and on of humans that have done things that the market told them, that's crazy, right? So the key thing I want to clue everybody into is this idea of being tuned in to what actually Steve Jobs did a talk on, nodes of progress within technology. So if you can tune in to some of the things that are happening literally in your research labs around campus, or certainly just within the news, these kind of emergent domains of technological progress, that's going to give you an edge. And that's exactly what Steve Jobs did. He was tuned in to the PC revolution before the mass market was. And so you have every opportunity to do that. And what are some examples right now today? Well, I already referenced one. ChatGPT and artificial intelligence is a node of progress. So if you can kind of use your imagination to see a positive product or service related to one of these technological nodes, like Steve did for the PC industry, then you don't have to have a crystal ball, or you don't have to rely on the old school version of market research to get this right. You can harness the power of these very clear signals that are being sent by the inventors all over the world. Some other big ones: quantum computing, machine learning, voice user interface. These are called nodes of progress because the smart people in the room, aka the person who asked that question, are to that these things are not going to go away. These are only going to get bigger. So as an inventor, you just have to get out in front of that before the bell curve of the market catches up in a consumer standpoint. So great question. Hopefully I answer that. And by the way, the other part of that question, kind of downplaying listening to the customer and market research. I want to make it clear that even Steve Jobs and Apple practiced market research. Some people might remember one early version of the iPhone was accidentally left at a bar, unlocked. And so everybody thought that was a mistake, but it wasn't. That they learned a lot from the market about what people liked and what they didn't like from that leaked iPhone. So there's a lot of different ways we can capture sentiment from the market before we go all in on our genius solution that we came up with in a closet.
That's great. So another question, wanted to revisit the 7th C in the entrepreneurial mindset, cash. And this question particularly came from Latin America. So one of the big issues that innovators have in Latin America is access to financing. And so a lot of the universities have, startups that are incubated in the university, but then it's hard to make that launch at scale into the market outside the university. Can you talk a little bit about that area and what you've noticed?
Yeah, that's a great question. And certainly not alone. We're in that exact same situation here in Phoenix, Arizona. Our innovators are constantly complaining about the lack of access to startup capital. So actually, that's why a couple of those examples I shared with you today left the friendly confines of Arizona, or left Latin America to go tap into capital that flows a little more easily, whether that be in San Francisco or Palo Alto or in Boston or in New York City. There's places all over the world where access to capital becomes a little more accessible, but that's not the answer I want to give. The answer that aligns with the 7C, especially cash, is that you need to be focused on creating value for your user and your payer. So in the perfect scenario, the money that you need to scale up your prototype or scale up your operation isn't coming from an investor. It's actually coming from the market itself. And so there's a lot of mechanisms you can tap into. One of the most exciting in the last decade is a mechanism called crowdfunding. And this works really well if you have a consumer-based product or service. But we have investors that have come into our classes all the time and tell our students to stay away from equity capital, stay away from fundraising for as long as you possibly can. What you want to do first is show evidence that your solution is linked in with what the market actually needs and wants. So and that's what we call traction. If you can show traction at a significant level without bringing in outside institutional funding, you have so much more leverage going into those fundraising rounds than you ever would without it. So I would tell all of you thinking about, creating a new product, a new service, a new company, whatever it might be, to first focus on how can we be a lean startup? How can we create value without first bringing in a bunch of capital to get to our first sale, right? So we could go on for a whole nother hour, I think, just on that one topic. But if you haven't done so already, read Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And that's kind of a book that really ties a lot of this together, and it will put you in a completely different mindset as a hopeful venture fundraiser. Less at the mercy of institutional capital, and more focused on how can we bootstrap this in a lean way to create maximum impact and leverage for future growth.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. There were so many questions that were submitted in the Q&A, and and the chat function. We could have talked about this all day, I think. But ending on an inspirational note, can you talk a little bit more about the fear of failure, which we all feel as human beings, and this prevents people from stepping out, even though they might have a really good idea?
Yeah, that's another very common, feeling that I think we all have, because in the domain of innovation and invention, there's a key psychological ingredient at play, and it's called our ego, right? So if we create something new, something novel, we're kind of psychologically inherently worried about how the world might receive us. So that, I think, from what I've seen working with student, faculty, and professional entrepreneurs, is something that needs to be put aside. And the easiest way I've found to put aside that fear is to approach your problem-solving methodology from a place of caring, of a place of, I want to help people. And this is my best guess, as being a kind of a researcher, this is my best guess as to how we might help these people solve for X, myself included, right? So if I come up with an invention, my first litmus test is, is this something I want? Is this something I would use? Is this something I would pay for? And in me going through those exercises myself, a lot of the times the answer is no. And it's even before I go public with any sort of new idea or concept, trust your gut. And here's the thing. Most people can't trust their guts when they're innovating in a domain that they don't care about or they're not curious about. So if you're not in the weeds in this market yourself as a practitioner or as a fan, or however you might describe yourself, that fear just ratchets up exponentially because you're outside of your element. So if you're in your element as an innovator, I can almost assure you the fear will go away relatively quickly. The other aspect of that question was failure. And so, want to make it clear that a lot of our smartest innovators at ASU, specifically within engineering, have never failed at anything in their entire life. Like academically, they've been straight A's. So the moment they're presented with a really, really hard challenge, which is to solve for X and then bring it to market, the statistics are clear. They're going to get, usually their first, second, third, fourth time, they're going to get their butt kicked, and they're going to fail, right? So that's part of the process of being a successful innovator and entrepreneur. And the people that support these folks that are willing to do that know that. So the funding that we have available at ASU for first-time entrepreneurs is literally described by our donors as a failure fund. They're willing to give grant capital to help with the experimental process of launching a new business, understanding from day one that likely that new product or service is going to fail. And they don't want the money back. They understand that it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. But you have to go through those early iterations of problem, solution, go to market before you get to your 40s, when statistically you're much more likely to be successful. And because you're more mature in your career, the fear has likely gone completely away at that point. So great question.
Great. So unfortunately, our time is coming to a close here. Just from the chat and the Q&As, people have found your lecture so inspiring and motivational. So that's a great way to keep going about our march and the rest of the month here. Before we go, though, I do want to share with the audience that we will be having another ASU Masterclass in April. This will be on the 19th of April, so please register for that. This masterclass is going to look at how transferable an innovation is within different contexts. And the case study they are using is a marine conservation. I know many of our participants live near the ocean, and so this might be interesting to them. So our presenter will be talking more about the transferability of innovation into different contexts. So I hope to see you all back at the next ASU Masterclass again on April 19th. Thank you again for coming to today's ASU Masterclass. Thank you again to Dr. Siebold for your time and your thoughtful lecture. And until April, I hope that you all take care and join me again for another ASU Masterclass. Bye.